This is Ash Ketchum, and you're listening to Silph Radio.
The last time that it was a couple times ago, but a couple episodes ago, we led into our episode with a discussion sort of about like veganism, kind of. And it got me thinking when I was editing the episode, I was like, man, it must be so difficult to be a vegan in the Pokemon universe. Like, excuse me, are these seeds vegan? Are these seeds cruelty-free?
Are they sentient? Are they jumping around? Like, are these seeds going to evolve into a life form?
Right.
Yeah, dude. It's basically impossible to be vegan in the Pokemon universe.
Right, because like, yeah.
That's amazing. I really never thought about that. Like, I do love the question, and I've always kind of raised this to other friends who are Pokemon fans but not vegan. Like, you know, what are they eating in Pokemon? You know, is that okay? Would you eat, you know, your Miltank? Would you know, do the whole factory farming thing? Would you artificially inseminate it, take its baby away, and then eat it when it gets too old to produce milk in the right quantity? Like, the realities of, like, raising a cow is pretty dark and scary, at least in the way that most places do it, compared to what you do to your Miltank, which is really sweet. It's, like, essentially the same thing. But then you can't even think about vegetables the same way either. It's like you have to eat something.
Right.
And in our reality, luckily, plants are considered to be non-sentient, so you don't feel guilty eating them. But in the Pokemon universe, I don't know if there's any safe options.
Right, and you know, I don't know. It's such a line of semantics, and where do we be semantics and pedantics? Because like, I kind of think of plants and vegetables as sentient, but of course there's like it's at the end of the day, sentient is a word, and like if we don't draw that line somewhere, then if like we can't delineate that like at a certain point something is not considered what this word refers to, even though it could be technically argued to meet the qualifications, then language just becomes useless and meaningless.
Whoa.
But like, cause like I don't know, like I'm not gonna yell at someone for kicking a tree the same way I'd yell at someone for kicking a dog, you know? And like,
yeah.
And maybe that has to do with the fact that the tree doesn't have nerve endings like a dog does. And so it's just a simple matter of practicality that it can't feel the fact that it was just kicked, so who cares? But I don't know.
Or it won't express discomfort. It's not going to move out of your way. Like, even something like a fish, which some people are like, oh, they don't have the same nerve structure that we do, so they don't feel pain, so it's okay to hurt them. It's like, that seems a little sketchy. Like, if you start trying to grab a fish, it's going to run away. It doesn't want you to grab it. There's, like, a consent to that, which a tree is like, okay, kick me. I'm not going to fight you back.
I think but again, like, some plants do have defense mechanisms.
Sure.
So, like,
I don't know. Are they defense mechanisms? I guess, like, the way that they've evolved, right? Like, having thorns and cacti having little spikies and stuff.
Oh, for sure, but that's the reason animals are mobile, because the way that they have evolved, you know, like that, because it is a defense mechanism to be able to pursue your food and run away from things that want to pursue you as food. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, I guess as like a Buddhist, my personal philosophy is like, always avoid killing unless it would be unreasonable to do so. So like, if you're refusing to wash your hands during this coronavirus situation because you don't want to kill the colonies of bacteria living on your hands, you're being unreasonable, no matter how noble your cause might be. Like, maybe I consider bacteria sentient as well, but it would be irrational and unreasonable to not wash my hands because, well, then I'd be just putting other people in danger, you know?
Right. And I suppose there's kind of like a spectrum of how relatable something is, from another human being extremely relatable, and then, you know, like a chimpanzee or something being pretty relatable, and then a dog, and then a cow, and then a, I don't know, snake, and like it kind of goes down to like trees and bacteria and stuff like that. It's like, well, you know, you have to eat something. There's some things you can't really not die or not kill, except for, I don't know, if you're like a Jainist or something, maybe.
Well, like, you just can't. No, eventually you're going to kill bacteria. I think you don't have to make a conscious judgment that you are more important to the universe than the bacteria, but just like, is it my job to protect the lives of every bacteria colony on the earth? Like, it's not. And so I'm going to do what I think it's a more appropriate job for me would be protecting the health in my human community. And so I'm going to wash my hands.
Totally. I mean, and that's kind of like, if it's not intentional, like, or I don't know, it's different with bacteria, I guess, something that can cause so much harm to something else. But like, if you're driving, 55 miles an hour and there's cars in front of, behind, and next to you, and there's a squirrel in the road, you're not supposed to swerve and crash into another car. You're supposed to just run over the squirrel. It's like a prioritization thing. It's like, I wasn't seeking this squirrel out, but it's in the way of keeping these other things safe.
It would be unreasonable to protect that squirrel's life by veering your car off to the side on the highway.
Right. Very true.
So, like, if you see a harmless beetle in your child's room, you could easily catch that beetle in a little cup and put it outside. You don't need to squash it. But if you see a fucking black widow in your kid's room, maybe just kill it. It might be unreasonable to put your family in danger by trying to catch this black widow and release it outside.
You know what would be much more dangerous than a black widow, though? A Charmander,
yeah,
which they give to their 10-year-olds all the time and let them, like, sleep in the house. Like, what? That's completely unreasonable. They can burn the house down so easy.
But a Charmander is sentient. But then again, I just said I think insects and animals are too, so where do we draw the line? And then, man. There's that question, again, to bring this back to the issue at hand, which is being the issue of veganism in the Pokemon universe.
Yeah.
Like, if a Charmander's sentient and it has just as much of a need to, like pursue preference and lifestyle and, like, whatever as a human being does, then is a Charmander who's interested in the culinary arts and flame roasts some nuts with its own tail fire? Are you allowed to eat those nuts if they've been roasted by a Charmander's fire? Because if you're not allowed to eat honey because bees prepare the honey, as a vegan, you can't eat that. So
if Charmander made it for itself or to feed its family and you take it away, I'd say that's ethically wrong. If they made it for you, yeah. If a bee flew into my bedroom and like prepared me a little like plate and put some honey on it, I'd eat that. But like breaking into their house and stealing all their stuff that they made for themselves, it's like robbing another culture of all their currency or something. It's like, that seems unethical. And it's like, oh, but they're just going to make more. It's like, yeah, because you took away everything they had. Like, they have to survive somehow, so they have to start over again.
Right. There's no capacity for the communication of consent between us. That was a lot of alliteration.
It was. It sounded beautiful. It was very well-spoken, eloquent. It's kind of like, I don't know, there's this, man, this is getting deep right off the bat, but it's almost, this is a thing I used to bring up when I was in like a men's Bible study group in high school or whatever. It was like, there's some Bible verse, I forget what it is, but it's about how like, as God treats men should treat the animals or something like that. And it's like, I mean, in a way, sure, once your life is going really good, God's going to, like, if you believe in God, God's going to come in and like destroy that and, kill your wife and do all the bad stuff that happens in life. But then again, you can you'll wake up again the next day and you can keep going, just like a bee with the honey. It's like, hey, we finally are, getting ahead on our quota for honey. And then the big man in the suit opened the ceiling from the sky again and took all the honey. Now we have to start over again. But it's like, well, as God did to me, I'm going to do to you or whatever. It's kind of wild, man.
Right, but that implies a level of understanding about the way that God interacts with humans, which we may not actually have the capacity to.
I don't think humans get it, but yeah. But that's a good point.
No,
wow.
This is great because I do sort of think of human beings as almost like gods in forging, and so I think that's the dilemma. Like, I think you're right, but the dilemma is it's difficult for us to be certain in areas like this. It's like when you're growing up, you don't always know what the most adult decision to make in a situation is, so you just do your best and you try to do your best.
Dude, that's life. You always have imperfect information and like you're always underskilled from where you want to be and you just have to make the best with what you can. But there's an interesting quote that's kind of that's like related to this. It's from The Color Purple, which is kind of interesting. But like when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I need to write this down and remember this quote. It's the animals of the world exist for their own reasons. They were not made for humans any more than black people were made for white people or women were created for men. And I was like, what? Like, I've been feeling that for my whole life, and I've never known how to say it. And they just offhanded, like, boom, there's the line. It's like, wow, that's really cool. Just because you can take advantage of something else doesn't mean you have to. Just because your parents did it doesn't mean you have to. Like, at some point, our ancestors were slave owners or whatever. That doesn't mean it's okay for us to do it, and it's okay for us to think that's morally wrong. Progress,
right.
Man.
There's a old Taoist parable or something about somebody, I don't remember exactly how it goes, but the general idea was someone was making the argument like that these animals that we eat and that we utilize or care for or breed or whatever are put here for us, for our benefit, as evidenced by the fact that we naturally predate on them. And someone else made the argument that, okay, I follow. So that means we were put here for the mosquitoes. And I like that.
That's a great question. A great point. Like, there's a Gandhi quote about, the more helpless the creature, the better it is to take care of it, kind of thing. Yeah, we should protect the creatures, especially the ones who it would be easy to take advantage of. Yeah, if they have a fighting chance, like if you're going out hunting and killing a shark with your bare hands, then sure, you deserve to eat that, I guess. But if you're just catching millions of fish in a net that they had no chance to possibly escape, it's a little cruel, really.
Well, I know what I'm eating for lunch. A shark.
Go ahead. Yeah, if Mark Zuckerberg wants to hunt his own sharks, like, go ahead, man. That's pretty cool.
Wait, is that a thing that's happening?
He doesn't actually hunt sharks, but I do believe that's his philosophy on eating meat, is if he's only going to eat meat if he hunted and killed it himself.
Okay.
Which is cool. It gets rid of all, the middlemen and all the weird, like, things of, like, oh, it's not a cow, it's beef. Or, like, where did chicken nuggets come from, mommy? Like, these things where our food is so abstract, like, so different than the kids, the children's book about farm animals. There's, like, not much of a connection to those farm animals or what you're eating every day normally. But I feel like his technique is, like, no, this is meat, and if you want the meat, here's where it comes from. Go get it. Like, it's really cool.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd ever do that. Mostly, I don't love meat anyway. I also definitely don't like killing stuff. Like, my stepdad tried to take me fishing when I'm like 7, and I couldn't even put the worm on the hook. Like, I was like, this is beyond the pale. This is something that no human should ever do. And he's like, no, this is just step 1. Then you throw it in the water, and you catch a bigger thing with that, and then you kill that thing. And it's like, what? Why? Oh my God. Somebody just make me a grilled cheese or something. And then I figured out where cheese came from, and that was even worse. Oh, man.
I think I don't, like, I also just don't like meat as well. But
that helps. Not enjoying the taste that much.
So I think I just don't claim to have a philosophy or an answer or a position on the issue so much as I have a personal philosophy, which I think, but I'm not making the assertion but I think could be applied universally. Like, I think could be a universal personal philosophy that, like, if you only kill when you deem it unreasonable not to, then you are... Now, that doesn't mean that your actions will always be pure, like, but I can recognize that somebody may say to me, okay, well, I think it's unreasonable to limit my diet to only plant material because I personally believe that we're supposed to eat meat, that it's natural for us to eat meat, and so I think it would be unreasonable to stop eating meat, and so therefore I think it would be unreasonable to never kill for meat. Now, I'm not saying I believe in this, but I'm saying that is a much better, like, I can respect that perspective more than, well, I don't eat it unless it has a face. I only eat it because it's delicious, and I never think about the implications of my actions.
That's true.
That's just like, okay, well, never thinking about the implications of your actions is never an admirable trait in any scenario.
Totally, because
except
lot of
maybe
argument...
like playing guitar, because if you think too much, you're going to get tripped up. Sorry, go ahead.
That's a great point. No, a big argument for why someone wouldn't be, vegan or vegetarian or aware of what they're eating or whatever is like, oh, well, the creature isn't rational, intelligent, or moral. Like, one of these things means you can eat stuff if it's not rational, intelligent, or moral. But at that point, that character you were just doing is irrational, immoral, and unintelligent, so we should eat that person, honestly.
Good news, Alex Jones.
They meet the criteria.
Right,
There's this,
you're right.
I mean, that was totally a joke, but there is this. There's an interesting documentary. This group I was in college kind of brought the documentarian in to do a presentation and play the movie and talk about it and stuff. The movie's called Speciesism, and it's really interesting. And I know that's a topic I've pitched you, the speciesism within Pokemon. But it's basically just discrimination based on what species something is. And the documentary has all these really interesting, like logical, kind of like flow charts. You know, like they ask people like, hey, why do you eat meat? And they're like, oh, because we used to do that in the past. And then the logical response is, well, humans used to do all kinds of crazy stuff that's obviously wrong now. And then they'd ask someone else and they'd say, oh, well, you know, pigs and cows and stuff, they're not very smart. And they're like, okay, well, is a dog smart? And they'd say, yeah, a dog's smart. Would you eat a dog? Oh, no, that's the worst thing of all time. It's like, well, you know, intellectually, their capacity is the same. They can do a lot of the same stuff. Sure, one of them is more mainstream to eat in this country and the other one's not.
And
but
yeah,
then are you saying
pigs are actually really intelligent too?
Oh, incredibly. Yeah. They can get out of like all kinds of enclosures. There's this animal sanctuary, Sunrise Animal Sanctuary in Marysville, Ohio. It's amazing. And they had to come up with like the most elaborate system to keep the pigs in because they kept figuring out how to unlock all these like handles. Like, it's great. They're like Pixar animals. Like, they can figure out any like puzzle you put in front of them. It's pretty cool.
I have a friend with a pet pig. It was really cool. I think it's like people are like, well, look, at the end of this line of questioning is just, this is the way it is because I live this way because this is the way I live and I'm not comfortable thinking about the implications of my actions, that is the only problem to me is that like, I don't know the answer. I don't expect everyone to just conform and change things. But the idea that any criticism of your actions or any consideration of the implications of your actions, it doesn't have to be a demonization. I can consider the implications of eating meat without demonizing people that eat meat, even if the conclusions I come to are that there are some pretty problematic implications. Just like that's why people use the word problematic, because it doesn't mean you are a terrible monster with intent of ill will. It means, okay, there might be some consequences that you haven't considered, and it wouldn't hurt to take that into consideration just in case that consideration affects your decision making. Like, you know.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, like if I was, ruler of the free world, which I don't think is a good idea, but if I was, I'd say, okay.
To be honest, though, like it's better than where we are now. So.
But I would say, okay, you can choose to eat whatever you want to, but you have to watch one of these like 5 documentaries first and then make your choice so that you're not just going off of what your parents raised you doing. But if you can watch Earthlings or Speciesism or like Vegucated or Unity, and then come away from that saying, yeah, I'm going to keep eating meat. It's the right thing to do. The taste is good, whatever. I can't give up cheese, yada, yada, yada. You hear these arguments all the time. It's like, that's fine. You know where it's coming from, so that's cool. You're doing your part as like a responsible human being. It's like someone who, if you can go to voting day and just vote because this is my party lines, boom, 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 that's fine. You're doing your thing. You've made a choice, at least in deciding what party you're in. It'd be better, if you did research and actually knew what names were going to be on the ballot. That's what we should aim for. But I'm okay with everyone at least making a choice. Am I in this party or that party? Instead of just going with the default. Like, oh, my parents are X party, so I'm X party. I'm not even going to think about it, which is how we approach food, I think. I grew up with, I don't know, this is a random Simpsons reference, but I grew up with just like pork chops and applesauce, so I'm just going to do pork chops and applesauce my whole life. Like, it'd be way better if you like made your own decisions and maybe, read an article or watched a documentary about it first, and then you can make your decision for your entire life. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think it's the old adage, different strokes. Takes different strokes to move the world. Because, there are some people who maybe it's good for them to make a decision of like, these are the values of my community, meaning maybe my family, my parents raised me this way. I've internalized these values, I understand them, and I recognize why they are important, and so I'm just going to stick with this rather than rocking the boat and trying to go out and make decisions that I don't trust myself as being, qualified to make. Like, if you're not the type who's capable of absorbing a ton of new information and like radically like changing and challenging your perceptions and like integrating these realizations into your decision making process. Like, that's understandable. Not everybody is, and not everybody should have to be to have a good effect on the world. But that doesn't mean that you just say, okay, I'm going to embrace ignorance, shut my eyes tightly, and yell at everyone who does question some choice I may have made. I don't know. Like, yeah, like, again, like, so that people could question or consider the implications of actions without demonizing the actions of the person making them. Because
that's a really good universal too. Even if someone's, beliefs are completely different than some of the ones that we share, you should still approach your life with that same thing. Even if you're an exact opposite politically type of person, that's still a good thing to live by.
All right. Maybe you don't have as much of a cognitive capacity, and so your limit of diminishing returns or whatever is like, look, I know that I support liberal policies, so I'm just going to vote for liberal candidates without actually looking into it. I'm not saying that's what people should do, but like, that is, it's not unreasonable to argue that, like, look, this is the peak of my capacity, and so I'm doing the best I can, and like, the best I can shouldn't imply that you are doing worse than someone else, because if you are functioning at your peak capacity, then you're doing someone better, or you're doing better than someone who has a higher peak capacity than you, or something. I hate to use the word higher and impose a hierarchy, but
Sure.
like, that's trying to overstep their bounds. Like, Thanos was trying to do more than he should have, and so someone who is capable of less than Thanos but doesn't try to, I don't know, destroy half the universe is doing better than Thanos.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good first draft of his plan, and then he just went with it. It's like, man, you should have taken that to a committee or something to poke holes in that argument, but